Hi everyone, it's Adam here from Ads Productions with the review of the Synology MR2200ac mesh router. Before I get started with this review, I am using two of these devices, one as the main router and the other one as a hotspot or an access point. The way I'm going to have this set up for my particular connection is by having the router connecting to the ONT for fiber, and then a mini switch going through to the other devices in the office down the hall. So we'll take one of the MR2200ACs and I'm going to use this as a router. I'm going to then make sure it's placed in the center of the house, quite near the ONT, connecting directly into the WAN port and LAN port going out to the switch. So ONT on the wall goes into the WAN port of the Synology, and then the LAN port of the same Synology is going to go out into a switch which will feed the internet to the other devices, including the secondary access point. Further down the hallway in the house is the secondary access point, also connected to the same network via a cable from that switch. Once you've decided where each access point is going to go and how you're configuring your network, are you going to have a router or are you just going to have a bunch of access points? That part's up to you. Once you've decided all of that and you've got them in position, it's then time to get the application on your phone called DS Router. Once you've downloaded the app, open it up and then select the Set up a new router option. After this, you'll be given a choice to select between the Wi-Fi SSID of Synology with a serial number at the end of it, or you can use the QR scanner to scan the device itself and then start the initialization of setting it up as a router or however you want to do it. So two options, choose Wi-Fi SSID or do the QR code. I've done both. They actually work really well. The only problem I've found is that because I was doing a little bit of changing of my network and testing of a few things before setting these up, I had to actually factory reset them a few times. And if you're thinking about doing the same thing, just know that it does take slightly longer than your average device. Not sure why, it's kind of frustrating how long it took to boot up, but it's a very minor issue, just thought I'd let you know. From the out-of-the-box setup, if you're ever asked for some sort of password, then just use Synology, all lowercase. Once the application has identified the hardware that you're working with, because I'm setting up the router, I had to enter the vendor-specific or ISP-specific information to allow it to connect and actually work as a replacement router. The information for this is easily found online depending on who your ISP is. All you have to do is type in ISP name and then fiber settings or something along those lines. You'll get all of the information you need. Plug this in, it's only a few fields, then you're good to go. After doing these slight vendor specific settings, just press on next at the top right. When you've done this, you'll start to see an applying settings circle appear. This will take approximately 3 minutes or so. It will just go round, it will go from 50%, sometimes it will jump. Just let this do its thing. It's configuring the hardware to your settings. Full transparency here, I did have about 5 to 10 minutes of problems actually getting it to initialize and complete the setup. The good thing was, after a bit of Googling, I could just press the back button, change the settings on the previous step in that wizard, apply the settings, and it will do it, and eventually it went through. So as long as you're not an idiot like me and you get the settings right first time, it will take 3 minutes from start to finish. Once you've completed the initialization, it's then going to ask you to connect to that Wi-Fi just so it can complete some tests and make sure there are no issues. After hopefully passing all of the tests, you can then choose to configure Quick Connect if you want. This is basically the remote access of the router or router. This is a different video entirely. I'm not going to get into that in this one. To add a secondary Wi-Fi point, open the DS Router app back up and go to the Wi-Fi points section. You'll then be asked to follow the wizard again, but this time you'll be adding a Wi-Fi point instead of adding a router. Make sure that the secondary Wi-Fi point has a blinking blue light and then press the Wi-Fi points ready button. You should now see the other Wi-Fi point as a discoverable device. If you had a massive house or 3 or 4 of these access points, this is where you would select each of them and add them all. Finally, give a name to the new Wi-Fi point. This is just to identify them, so office or backroom 4 or lounge room. This isn't the SSID, this is just so you can distinguish between any and all access points. If I was able to give direct feedback to Synology, I'd probably say it would be nice to have it be crystal clear to any and all users of these devices that when you edit this name, it's just a label, it's not the SSID. Anyway, back to the main section of the video. When you're at this stage, hit done. And now you'll see that it's configuring. This is the part where the SSID and the passwords from the main router or the main access point will be transferred to the new one so that you can walk around your house with the same Wi-Fi connection with no disconnects. Because it's basically going to say, okay, you were in this place having internet from this device, now you've moved across the room and now the other device has picked you up in its proximity, so let's use the same credentials to keep the connection going. Simple as that. To be able to configure a router and an access point in a couple of clicks on your phone through an app, that's cool. I was expecting it to be a bit more of a palaver to set up devices and things, but this really did take all the stress out of it. Once you've gone through the wizard of setting up the secondary hotspot, you'll notice that when you open up the app again, you'll see it as processing. It takes a few minutes to be fully usable within the app, but it will just be stuck on processing until it's ready. It would be nice if it gave you a bit more of an insight as to what it was doing in this processing state, because it does stay there for a while, but eventually it does give you the green tick and is usable. When you're configuring a hotspot, you might come across an error. If this is the case, I would recommend you do the following. Check that the 2 access points aren't too far away from each other to communicate, and on the flip side, just check that they aren't too close to each other. When it comes to setting up devices and general network configuration, if you're one of those people that would prefer to sit at your PC, that's fine. All you need to do is just go to the gateway address. In my case, it was 192.168.1.1, and you can log in with the username and password that you created with the wizard. The mobile app isn't really designed to be a fully fledged management console, just as a means to access the main details when you're on the go and you need to check in or make a quick change here and there. If you want to get into technical details and in-depth analysis of your routers and hotspots, then I would suggest using the web browser. This is the operating system that runs these devices and contains all the features and functions that you come to expect from a hotspot and a router and various security tools, etc., etc. I'll get onto them right now. Once you log in with your created credentials, you'll notice that the interface looks very similar to the Synology NAS platform. Or you may not notice. You might not have used their NAS drives in the past, but they're pretty common, there's a decent chance. Anyway, the first thing I would do is when you've logged in, I would go to System under Control Panel and then begin searching for updates and then installing them. This obviously keeps your device up to date with the latest security patches, and it also exposes you to the area where you can set up automatic updates and manual updates if you want to, and even release notes. So have a look here as your first port of call. There's also an application called Wi-Fi Connect, and when you open this window, it will allow you to manage all Wi-Fi points and wireless devices and basically what's connected to which device. I found that this dashboard was very useful for troubleshooting, as you're able to see if there's any traffic going through each of the hotspots and whether it's the 2.4 GHz channel or the 5 GHz channel. Not only this, but you can also run performance tests to diagnose for various issues that might be there. And if you're not sure of which hotspot's which, when you're doing your troubleshooting or changing of configuration, you can actually do a blink of an LED to make sure that, okay, if I activate this LED and go to that specific room, let's make sure we're actually working on the right one. This is if you haven't set up your labels correctly and things like that. It's just a way to help you identify your hotspot in your network. Within the Synology Router Manager, you can also choose to configure or not WPA3. This is a fairly new technology and it's worth looking into if you're considering buying this device. If you double click on the Wi-Fi point, you can also see a little bit more information. In general, I've found that if you choose to make changes to your Wi-Fi points, whether it's the access key or the name or the channels, when you actually process the change, it's not the quickest in the world to apply the changes. It does do them and it does them correctly every time. It's just not an instant process. And I think people that have dealt with network equipment in the past will come to expect this sort of behavior, but it's just something to point out if you're fairly new to the networking game. Things aren't normally instant when you make changes. It will require hotspots to be restarted maybe. It will also require you to probably forget the devices on your phones so you can reconnect with the new access point name and it doesn't cause conflicts. It's just things like that. Don't expect them to be instantaneous, but they do work 100% of the time. Let's say you're holding a party at your house and you want people for that evening to be able to access your internet connection, but you don't want them to remember your password so that they can then just pull up outside and use your internet. Well, this is where guest Wi-Fi comes in. Using SRM, you can configure this with a custom page to say, welcome to my house, please sign in or sign up. They get a login detail and they get a session on your network as a guest. You can restrict the guest Wi-Fi down pretty heavily. It's more of a temporary solution for a one-off access. It's not really meant to be a permanent fix. Parental controls are available in this. So you can also decide, okay, so I want 4 people's machines not to have access to website A, B, C, and D. That's fine. You could just open the list, add those websites in one by one, and block all of those websites. Those websites won't only be blocked in the web browsers of those machines. Because this is a firewall-based policy, you'll be able to block this in social media messaging, in anything that will try and transmit or try and request that website, will block that website. So if somebody's friend sends them a link to a banned website and they're part of that group that's restricted, they won't be able to get to it. If there are certain people within your household that you don't want accessing the internet at certain times of the day, this is easily configurable using the software too. So you can find their device that they use and then you can set an exact time schedule, even to the point where you could say, okay, 2 hours on Monday, 4 hours on the weekend, half an hour on a Thursday night. You're able to go into the options, select a device, and specify exactly when they can or can't access the internet. As for blocking particular sites, you've got a couple of access levels. You can block the access to known malicious websites. This is known as the basic level. You can then block the access to known malicious sites and adult-only websites. This is known as the protected category. You can also define your own custom list of every site that you definitely don't want people to be accessing. So you could literally have the user should be able to access these 5 sites and they should definitely not be able to access these 5 sites. You can get very, very granular with this. When I installed these two, one as a router and the other one as an access point, to replace my existing hardware, which I won't mention the name of, let's just say it was very basic hardware, I noticed a massive improvement in the Wi-Fi speed and reliability. I think it speaks volumes of how easy it is and how well these are designed, based on the fact that I plugged in the device to my network, I downloaded an app, I clicked a button, and then I had a configured device. Not one configured device, 2 configured devices through a smartphone app. That's pretty impressive, and it's the way things should be done. I do like the interface that it gives you as well. It feels like you're logging into a system rather than just a page to change some values. It's very easy to use. There are a couple of menus that are very clearly laid out. At one time when I was trying to configure and get it all going for my network, I was asked to then change the Wi-Fi key and the SSID name to something a bit more friendly. This took about 2 minutes in total. Easy as pie to do. As polished and as nice as it is, there are a few loading time issues I found anyway. When you change certain settings that need a restart or, please refresh the page to see the fully configured version of, it does take a few more minutes than I would have preferred. This is the sort of thing that will be improved on in later firmware releases and hardware releases down the line. Just the specific one that I had, and when I updated it, I found that there were a few times where I was thinking, that probably shouldn't have taken that long. Not a deal breaker, just something for you to be aware of. If you're looking for a device or two to extend your wireless network and overall give you more access, flexibility, customization, and visibility over the reports and network infrastructure that you have in your house, I would definitely be considering these. I placed them in my house, my Wi-Fi increased tenfold, the reliability was there, and I could take up my phone and check on what was going on. What more could you ask for a small-scale wireless network? This has been Adam from Ads Productions with the review of the Synology MR2200ac wireless mesh router.